What if the tension between you and your family isn't about disrespect, but about evolution itself? Jung discovered something profound about spiritual awakening that explains why your personal growth feels like a threat to those who raised you. The moment you begin questioning inherited beliefs and seeking your own truth, you activate what Jung called the archetypal conflict between tradition and transformation. But here's what makes this discovery so unsettling. It's not just about generational differences or changing times. Jung found that spiritual growth literally rewrites the psychological contracts that held families together for generations. When you start following your authentic path, you're not just changing yourself, you're exposing the collective shadow that everyone agreed to ignore. Before we dive deeper into Jung's insights, I want to ask you something. Have you ever heard someone say, "You're not the same person anymore when you started growing spiritually"? Let's share in the comments. After subscribing to this channel and liking this video, write in the comments where you're watching from and share your experience. Let's learn from each other's journeys and take our understanding to the next level. Remember, we grow stronger when we share our truths with one another. Share this video with people you care about so they can learn these insights too. Jung spent decades studying what happens when individuals break free from collective unconscious patterns. What he discovered changed everything we thought we knew about family dynamics and spiritual evolution. In 1913, during his own psychological crisis, Jung realized that his separation from Freud wasn't just professional disagreement. It was an archetypal pattern that repeats whenever consciousness evolves beyond its inherited limitations. The family system operates like a psychological organism, Jung observed. Each member plays a specific role that maintains the group's emotional equilibrium. When someone begins authentic spiritual work, they start questioning these assigned roles. The good child who never caused trouble suddenly sets boundaries. The peacekeeper refuses to absorb everyone's emotional chaos. The family achiever starts prioritizing inner fulfillment over external success. This role disruption triggers what Jung called constellation of the complex, the family's shadow material. Everything they've collectively refused to acknowledge begins surfacing through projections onto the spiritually awakening member. You become the repository for all their disowned fears about change, authenticity, and personal power. But why does spiritual growth specifically trigger such intense reactions? Jung identified several psychological mechanisms at work. First, the persona crisis. Every family develops a collective persona, a carefully constructed image of who they are in the world. We're the strong ones who don't need help. We're the successful family that has it all together. We're the religious family that follows tradition. When you begin authentic spiritual exploration, you naturally start dismantling these masks. Your journey toward truth exposes the gap between the family's public image and private reality. This creates tremendous anxiety in other family members because the persona isn't just pretense. It's psychological protection against feeling vulnerable in an uncertain world. When you crack that protective shell through your growth, everyone else feels exposed. Second, the authority complex gets activated. Traditional family structures rely on hierarchical authority patterns. Elders hold wisdom, make decisions, and younger members follow guidance. Spiritual growth inherently democratizes truth. You start trusting your inner knowing over external authority. You might question religious beliefs that were never actually examined, just inherited. You begin making choices based on your soul's calling rather than family expectations. This shift threatens the entire power structure that kept the family functioning. If wisdom comes from within rather than from age or position, what happens to the established order? If truth is personal rather than handed down, where does that leave traditional authorities? Jung observed that families often respond to this threat through what he called archetypal possession. Family members become possessed by archetypal energies that feel larger than their individual personalities. The mother becomes the eternal mother archetype, sacrificing everything for her children and demanding gratitude. The father embodies the patriarchal king, expecting absolute loyalty to family traditions. Siblings might become possessed by sibling rivalry archetypes, competing for who's the most devoted to family values. These archetypal possessions create incredible emotional pressure on the spiritually growing individual. You're not just dealing with personal disagreements anymore. You're facing archetypal forces that feel ancient and overwhelming. The guilt becomes cosmic. The pressure to conform feels like a matter of family survival. Here's where Jung's insight becomes crucial. These aren't conscious manipulations or deliberate emotional abuse, though they certainly feel that way. These are unconscious psychological mechanisms triggered by the family system's attempt to maintain its existing structure. Understanding this doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it helps you respond from consciousness rather than reactivity. The shadow projection mechanism works through what Jung called participation mystique. Family members unconsciously merge their identity with yours. When you change, they feel like they're losing themselves. Your growth activates their deepest fears about abandonment, inadequacy, and loss of control. Instead of facing these fears directly, they project them onto your spiritual journey. Your meditation practice becomes selfish navel-gazing. Your boundary setting becomes thinking you're better than us. Your questioning of inherited beliefs becomes being ungrateful for everything we gave you. These projections feel so real to them because they're defending against their own unconscious material that your growth has brought to the surface. But Jung discovered something profound about this archetypal conflict. It's not pathological, it's evolutionary. The tension between the old and new, tradition and innovation, collective conformity and individual authenticity, drives psychological and spiritual evolution forward. Without this creative tension, consciousness would stagnate in familiar patterns. The senex archetype represents the wisdom of tradition, the accumulated knowledge of generations, the stability that comes from proven ways of living. The pure archetype embodies the spirit of renewal, the courage to try new ways, the vision that sees beyond current limitations. Healthy development requires both energies in dynamic balance. Problems arise when either archetype becomes dominant without integration. The senex without the pure becomes rigid dogma that crushes innovation. The pure without the senex becomes chaotic rebellion that destroys valuable wisdom. Your spiritual growth represents the pure energy awakening within the family system. The resistance you face often represents an over-identification with senex energy. Jung's individuation process provides a roadmap for navigating this archetypal tension. Individuation doesn't mean becoming isolated or rejecting all family connections. It means developing a conscious relationship with both your individual truth and your collective heritage. You honor what served while courageously growing beyond what no longer fits. This process requires what Jung called holding the tension of opposites. You can love your family while disagreeing with their beliefs. You can respect tradition while choosing innovation. You can maintain connection while establishing autonomy. This paradoxical thinking feels threatening to binary mindsets that see everything as either or, rather than both and. The family's shadow often contains disowned spiritual longing. Many family members who resist your growth are unconsciously envious of your courage to explore beyond familiar boundaries. Their criticism might mask their own unfulfilled yearning for deeper meaning and authentic connection. They attack what they secretly desire, but feel too afraid to pursue. Understanding this dynamic helps you respond with compassion rather than defensiveness. Their resistance isn't really about you. It's about their own unlived possibilities confronting them through your example. This doesn't mean you should sacrifice your growth to make them comfortable, but it can help you maintain empathy while protecting your spiritual development. Jung emphasized that authentic spiritual growth always includes shadow work. As you develop spiritually, you must also integrate your own shadow material. Sometimes the family's criticism contains kernels of truth about spiritual ego or bypassing that you need to address. The key is learning to extract valuable feedback while rejecting projections that don't belong to you. This discernment requires developing what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to hold conscious awareness above the emotional reactivity that archetypal conflicts generate. When family members attack your spiritual path, can you stay centered in your truth while remaining open to legitimate concerns? Can you protect your growth while maintaining love for those who don't understand it? The archetypal mother often becomes activated when family members resist your spiritual development. The devouring mother aspect wants to keep you dependent and unchanged. She fears that your growth means losing you, so she unconsciously sabotages your development through guilt, manipulation, or emotional overwhelm. The nurturing mother aspect genuinely wants your happiness, but mistakenly believes that safety lies in staying the same. Learning to differentiate between these archetypal energies helps you respond appropriately. You can appreciate genuine concern while refusing to be devoured by possessive love. You can maintain connection with the nurturing aspect while setting boundaries against the devouring tendency. The archetypal father also gets constellated around spiritual growth. The wise king father wants to see you develop your full potential and will support your authentic development even when it challenges his own beliefs. The tyrannical king father demands loyalty to his vision of reality and sees your spiritual exploration as betrayal or rebellion against his authority. Again, learning to distinguish between these energies allows for more conscious navigation. You can honor legitimate wisdom while refusing to submit to authoritarian control. You can respect the father's experience while claiming your right to your own spiritual discoveries. Jung observed that spiritual awakening often triggers what he called the divine child archetype in families. The spiritually growing person becomes the bearer of new possibility, the one who might redeem the family's unlived potential. This creates enormous pressure because you're unconsciously expected to carry the family's spiritual hopes, while simultaneously being punished for growing beyond their comfort zone. This double bind explains why spiritual growth feels so isolating within families. You're supposed to be special but not too different. You're expected to evolve, but not to change. You're meant to bring new light, but not to illuminate existing shadows. Breaking free from this impossible position requires recognizing that you're not responsible for carrying anyone else's spiritual development. The scapegoat dynamic often emerges around spiritual growth. The family unconsciously designates you as the problem that needs fixing, rather than examining their own resistance to growth and change. All the family's psychological dysfunction gets projected onto your spiritual journey. If you would just stop being so weird or difficult, everything would go back to normal. This scapegoating serves the family's homeostasis by avoiding collective shadow work. Instead of examining unhealthy patterns, communication styles, or belief systems, they focus on your need to change back to who you used to be. Breaking free from the scapegoat role requires refusing to carry responsibility for the family's emotional equilibrium. Jung's concept of the collective shadow explains why spiritual growth feels threatening to groups. Families, like all collectives, have shadow aspects that they unconsciously agree to ignore. These might include addiction, abuse, financial anxiety, religious doubt, sexual shame, or emotional repression. Your spiritual development inevitably brings consciousness to these shadowy areas. When you start speaking honestly about family dynamics, setting boundaries around unhealthy behavior, or questioning inherited beliefs, you're essentially holding up a mirror to the collective shadow. This feels unbearable to family members who have invested tremendous energy in keeping these shadows hidden, even from themselves. The anima and animus archetypes also play crucial roles in spiritual growth conflicts. The anima represents the inner feminine principle of receptivity, intuition, and emotional depth. The animus embodies the inner masculine principle of discernment, assertion, and independent thinking. Balanced spiritual development requires integrating both energies. Traditional family roles often split these archetypal energies along gender lines. Men are expected to embody animus qualities while suppressing anima development. Women are encouraged to develop anima aspects while diminishing animus expression. Your spiritual growth might involve reclaiming the discerned archetypal energy, which threatens established gender expectations within the family. A woman who develops her animus through spiritual practice becomes more assertive, independent, and willing to challenge authority. This triggers family members who are invested in her remaining compliant and accommodating. A man who develops his anima through spiritual work becomes more emotionally expressive, intuitive, and receptive. This threatens family members who need him to maintain traditional masculine roles. Jung's wisdom suggests that authentic spiritual development requires integrating both archetypal energies, regardless of gender. This integration often catalyzes intense family reactions because it challenges fundamental assumptions about how men and women should behave, think, and relate. The projection withdrawal process becomes essential for spiritual growth within family systems. Jung taught that we must learn to withdraw projections we've placed on family members and reclaim projections they've placed on us. This double movement creates space for authentic relationship based on who people actually are, rather than archetypal roles they've been assigned. Withdrawing your projections means seeing family members as complex human beings rather than archetypal figures. Your mother isn't just the great mother. She's a woman with her own unlived dreams, fears, and limitations. Your father isn't just the wise king or terrible tyrant. He's a man carrying his own wounds and doing his best with the consciousness he has available. Reclaiming projections means refusing to carry archetypal energies that don't belong to you. You're not the family's savior, scapegoat, or hope for redemption. You're an individual on your own spiritual journey who happens to share genetic and historical connections with these particular people. This projection work requires tremendous discernment because family members often resist having their projections returned. They've organized their emotional world around seeing you in specific ways. When you refuse to carry their projections, they might escalate pressure to get you back into familiar roles. Jung emphasized that spiritual growth always involves what he called the sacrifice of the persona. You must be willing to lose the identity that others find comfortable in order to discover who you actually are beneath social conditioning. This sacrifice feels like death to family members who are attached to your old persona. The family mourns the person you used to be, even as you celebrate the person you're becoming. They grieve the loss of predictability, the end of familiar dynamics, the uncertainty about how to relate to this new version of you. Their resistance often masks genuine grief about losing the relationship they thought they had. Understanding this grief helps you maintain compassion during difficult transitions. Their anger might be protecting deeper feelings of loss and confusion. This doesn't mean you should return to old patterns to comfort them, but it can help you navigate conflicts with more empathy and patience. The spiritual bypassing trap becomes particularly dangerous during family conflicts. When relatives attack your spiritual path, it's tempting to retreat into spiritual concepts that avoid dealing with practical relationship challenges. You might use forgiveness as a way to avoid setting boundaries, or surrender as an excuse for not standing up for yourself. Jung warned against using spiritual insights to escape psychological work. True spiritual development includes learning to navigate human relationships with both compassion and discernment. You can forgive family members while maintaining protective boundaries. You can love unconditionally while refusing to accept conditional treatment. The integration of spirit and psychology requires what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to hold spiritual wisdom and psychological insight in creative tension. This means honoring your soul's calling while developing practical skills for managing archetypal conflicts within family systems. Remember that spiritual growth isn't about becoming perfect or rising above human messiness. It's about becoming more authentically yourself while learning to navigate relationships from consciousness rather than reactivity. Your family conflicts become opportunities to practice these skills in the most challenging laboratory possible. Jung's individuation process suggests that true spiritual maturity includes the capacity to maintain authentic connection with people who don't share your spiritual interests or understanding. This doesn't mean compromising your truth, but it does mean developing the flexibility to love across differences. The goal isn't to convert your family to your spiritual path or to prove that you're right and they're wrong. The goal is to remain true to your soul's calling while honoring the humanity in everyone around you. This both-and approach dissolves the either-or thinking that creates unnecessary polarization. Your spiritual development serves not just your individual evolution, but the collective evolution of consciousness. By doing your own inner work, integrating your shadow, and developing authentic relationships, you contribute to the healing of generational patterns. Your courage to grow beyond inherited limitations creates new possibilities for future generations. The resistance you face from family members often indicates that you're doing important work. If your spiritual growth weren't significant, it wouldn't trigger such intense reactions. The very conflicts that feel so painful might be signs that consciousness is trying to evolve through your family system. Jung believed that individuals who successfully navigate the individuation process become bridges between the old and new, tradition and innovation, collective conformity and individual authenticity. Your spiritual journey, especially when it includes conscious navigation of family archetypal conflicts, serves this bridging function. Trust the process of your spiritual development while maintaining compassion for those who find it threatening. Honor your soul's calling while remaining open to legitimate concerns from people who love you. Integrate spiritual insights with psychological wisdom as you navigate the complex territory of authentic relationship. The tension between spiritual growth and family harmony isn't a problem to be solved, but a creative force to be consciously engaged. When you approach these conflicts as opportunities for practicing consciousness rather than battles to be won, you transform archetypal opposition into evolutionary collaboration. Your spiritual journey belongs to you, but it doesn't happen in isolation. Learning to grow authentically while maintaining loving connections with people who don't understand your path represents one of the most advanced spiritual practices available. Jung's insights provide a roadmap for this delicate navigation. Remember that the goal isn't to eliminate conflict, but to engage it consciously. Archetypal tensions generate the creative energy that drives psychological and spiritual evolution. When you learn to work with these forces rather than against them, family relationships become laboratories for developing wisdom, compassion, and authentic power. What family pattern are you ready to transform through your spiritual growth? But before you answer that, let me share Jung's most profound insight about the ultimate purpose of these archetypal conflicts. Jung discovered that family resistance to spiritual growth serves an unexpected function in the collective unconscious. The very people who seem to oppose your development are actually participating in what he called the dialectical process of consciousness evolution. The resistance isn't just obstacle, it's the pressure that transforms coal into diamond. Think about it this way. If everyone around you immediately supported and understood your spiritual journey, would you develop the same depth of conviction, compassion, and authentic power? Jung observed that individuals who faced the greatest archetypal opposition often became the most integrated and wise. The family's unconscious resistance forces you to clarify your truth, strengthen your boundaries, and develop unshakable inner authority. This doesn't mean the pain isn't real or that you should be grateful for harmful treatment. It means that consciousness uses even unconscious opposition as material for growth. The family members who trigger you most intensely are often your greatest teachers, though neither of you may realize it consciously. But here's where Jung's insight becomes revolutionary. The archetypal conflicts you navigate within your family create what he called morphic resonance that affects the entire collective unconscious. When you successfully integrate spiritual growth with family relationships, you're not just healing your personal dynamics. You're contributing to the evolution of how families can hold space for individual spiritual development. Every time you respond to family criticism with consciousness rather than reactivity, you're encoding new possibilities into the collective field. Every boundary you set with love rather than anger demonstrates that spiritual growth and family connection aren't mutually exclusive. Every projection you refuse to carry while maintaining compassion shows that individuation can happen within relationship rather than in isolation from it. Jung believed that individuals who master this integration become what he called cultural creatives, people who bridge seemingly opposing worlds and create new possibilities for human relationship. Your struggle with family resistance to your spiritual growth isn't just personal healing work, it's evolutionary service. The shadow integration that happens through family archetypal conflicts has profound ripple effects. When you learn to see your family members as complex human beings rather than archetypal figures, when you can hold love and boundaries simultaneously, when you can honor tradition while choosing innovation, you develop psychological capacities that our culture desperately needs. Modern society suffers from what Jung called archetypal splitting, the tendency to see everything in black and white, us versus them, traditional versus progressive. The integration work you do within your family system helps heal this collective wound. You become living proof that both and thinking is possible, that love and limits can coexist, that spiritual growth and family harmony aren't necessarily incompatible. But Jung warned about a particular trap that spiritually growing individuals often fall into. The spiritual superiority complex can develop when you use your growth to feel better than family members who haven't done inner work. This attitude actually perpetuates the very archetypal splitting you're trying to heal. True spiritual maturity includes what Jung called conscious humility, the recognition that everyone is doing their best with the consciousness they have available. Your family members' resistance to your growth isn't moral failing. It's psychological protection based on their current level of awareness and life experience. This humility doesn't mean accepting harmful treatment or suppressing your truth. It means holding compassion for the unconscious fear that drives their resistance while maintaining firm boundaries around what you will and won't accept. You can love people while refusing to enable their unconscious patterns. Jung's final insight about spiritual growth and family dynamics centers on what he called the return of the prodigal. At some point in the individuation process, you develop enough inner stability and authentic power that you can return to family relationships from a place of choice rather than compulsion. This return doesn't mean going back to old patterns or suppressing your growth. It means bringing your integrated consciousness back into relationship with people who shaped you. You can participate in family gatherings without losing yourself. You can love family members without needing their approval. You can honor your heritage while maintaining your individual truth. The family members who once felt threatened by your spiritual development might actually begin to respect the person you've become. Not everyone will make this shift, but Jung observed that authentic spiritual development often has a magnetic quality that draws others toward greater consciousness, even if they don't pursue formal spiritual practices. Your presence becomes a field of possibility rather than a source of threat. Instead of pushing against family patterns, you embody alternatives. Instead of arguing for your truth, you live it so authentically that others can feel its reality. This shift from oppositional to embodied spiritual expression represents the maturity of your individual development. Jung emphasized that this return phase requires particular vigilance around projection and regression. Being back in family systems can trigger old patterns and unconscious dynamics. The difference is that you now have awareness and tools to navigate these challenges consciously. You might notice family members trying to pull you back into familiar roles. The key is maintaining what Jung called conscious participation, choosing how to engage rather than reacting automatically. You can play with old family dynamics without being consumed by them. You can enjoy shared memories without denying your growth. You can participate in traditions that have meaning while gracefully declining those that don't serve you. The ultimate gift you offer your family through successful spiritual development isn't conversion to your path or validation of your choices. It's the demonstration that authentic individual development strengthens rather than threatens family bonds. You become living evidence that people can grow, change, and evolve while maintaining love and connection. This modeling has profound effects on younger family members who are watching how you navigate the tension between individual authenticity and family belonging. Your example shows them that they don't have to choose between personal truth and family love. They can see that spiritual development leads to more conscious relationship rather than isolation. Jung believed that families, like individuals, have developmental tasks. One of the primary tasks of modern families is learning to hold space for individual spiritual development while maintaining collective bonds. Your willingness to do the difficult work of integrating personal growth with family relationships serves this collective evolution. The archetypal conflicts you've navigated prepare you to help other families facing similar challenges. Your hard-won wisdom about balancing spiritual growth with family dynamics becomes a gift you can offer others who are struggling with these tensions. You become a bridge between worlds, helping others find their path through the same archetypal landscape you've learned to navigate. Remember that the goal was never to eliminate family conflicts around your spiritual growth. The goal was to engage these conflicts consciously, extract their gifts, and use them as fuel for deeper integration. The resistance you faced helped you develop spiritual muscles you might never have discovered in a completely supportive environment. Jung's vision of individuation suggests that mature spiritual development includes the capacity to dance with archetypal energies rather than being possessed by them. You can embody the pure spirit of innovation when appropriate and honor the senex wisdom of tradition when relevant. You can access your inner mother's nurturing when others need care, and your inner father's authority when boundaries are required. This archetypal flexibility allows you to meet family members where they are while maintaining your authentic center. You're no longer trapped in reactive patterns or defensive positions. You can respond to family dynamics from wisdom rather than woundedness, from consciousness rather than conditioning. The journey of integrating spiritual growth with family relationships never fully ends. Each family gathering, holiday, or life transition offers new opportunities to practice conscious relationship. Each challenge becomes a chance to deepen your integration and refine your capacity to love without losing yourself. Your spiritual path, tested and strengthened through family archetypal conflicts, becomes more authentic and grounded. You've learned to hold your truth in the face of opposition, maintain boundaries under pressure, and love people who don't understand you. These are the skills that transform ordinary spiritual seeking into extraordinary spiritual mastery. Write in the comments, what's one family pattern you've successfully transformed through your spiritual growth? Share your story and inspire others who are navigating similar challenges. And if this deep dive into Jung's wisdom helped you understand your family dynamics differently, hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who's struggling to balance their spiritual development with family relationships. Together we're healing generational patterns and creating new possibilities for conscious family connection.